All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Hot Mic, a podcast where divergent points of view come together to debate and discuss hot topics. My name is Nathan Ivey. I'm your humble host. And as always, I am not alone. Today, joined by Fanon Rucker and my homie on this adventure, as always, Kevin Aldrich with the Cincinnati Enquirer, the opinion page editor. Fellas, welcome to Hot Mic. How are you?
Good, Nathan. How are you
Great.
doing?
How you doing today?
Doing great. Great. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. Hopefully we can have some intense conversation on a wide array of different topics, everything from local issues to national issues, maybe even some cultural issues we may get a chance to touch on today. Hey, listen, this is a brand new podcast, so a lot of people don't know that we're out here. Do us a favor and please like and in particular share this. Also, in the description of today's show, you can find a link to our YouTube channel, Hot Mic Podcast HQ on YouTube. We definitely want you to subscribe to us right there. We'll be pushing a lot of content to that platform. And of course, we're on Facebook today as well as we build out our Facebook presence. So let's get straight into it. A lot to discuss. I don't even know where to start. But since we're 2 days removed from the Bengals, why don't we start with a little bit of Bengal conversation here? So Hamilton County Commissioner Alicia Reese, and I don't think this story is too old because I think it's still relevant. If you go back a couple of years ago when the Bengals made their Super Bowl run, she suggested that there be a free event for, Hamilton County fans or just Bengal fans and also taxpayers at Paul Brown Stadium. And she was met with a lot of headwind about that. And it never really happened. She was told that maybe the timing was off. If you don't remember, basically the Bengals were playing the Chiefs in Kansas City, and she wanted to do like a live showing of the game with fans at Paul Brown Stadium, and she wanted to be free. It never happened. Well, this past Sunday, the Bengals ended up doing the exact same thing, only they charged $99. With taxes, I think it was like $121. I'm not sure if the Bengals had responded to reports and questions from the media. The last media report that I saw, and maybe you guys got some updates on it, they had not responded. But essentially, I mean, it comes across as if the Bengals were greedy. And I want to get you guys' take on it.
Yeah, I would say that I do think it is a little bit of a slap in the face to taxpayers of Hamilton County. I mean, I think that first of all, I want to know like who's paying $100 to go down and know this. I mean, there's nothing like being around other Bengals fans, for a game, especially when they're actually playing at home. But that's maybe more than some single game tickets might be for the Bengals. I'm not sure what a single game ticket is going for, but over $100 to come and sit and watch a game down at the stadium when I can watch it home for free. Would like to know who's doing that. And then on top of that too, I think it's a way that, the Bengals can show, to fans, to taxpayers, just to everybody that they do care about the fans, that it's a little bit of a give back. It's a big game. I mean, they could still make plenty of money off of concessions and everything else and drinks that they're going to have there and make it a free event and just open it up, to whoever would like to come there and watch the game together. And I think it does make it seem like, they said no to Commissioner Reese's plan because maybe they just hadn't figured out a way to monetize it for themselves when she was asking about it last time. And they took the time between her ask and last Sunday to figure out how to make that happen and to make some money. And, and that seems to be what happened.
It's interesting the timing of this whole thing, because we're talking about right now that the Bengals would like all these accoutrements in this stadium that's going to be rebuilt. $400 million when it was originally built, and I remember that, not from here, but I remember all that. It was early on in my Cincinnati career. And now they're talking about it's going to cost $800 million to rebuild or to fix the stuff that's already there. So in doing that, you have to believe that some part of this discussion about why they couldn't or wouldn't be inclined to allow folks to come and watch the Bengals. I think it was play the Chiefs too, wasn't it? Play the Chiefs for free back then. Now, when we're talking about a renegotiation of the agreement, potentially, or adding taxpayer dollars to the stadium, now they're saying, well, come on down. By the way, you can be around other folks, but by the way, we do need some of that money for you all to be able to come and watch with everybody. I don't know. Let me just say, as a lawyer on a big contract, you can always find reasons to say no. Trust me on that. And that's what it sounded like they did back when the playoffs were happening. But here they found a reason to say yes, because they were going to have some financial backing behind what they were doing.
Yeah, for me, I just felt like, let me just say this. I don't know. We don't know, because at this point, the Bengals haven't responded, which I think is a response in and of himself. Like, why haven't you responded? Like, you got a lot of people that support the Bengals who can't afford a $100 ticket. In fact, I would say most of the people that support the Bengals can't afford a $120, ticket, but would like to be there. And I thought that when Alicia Reese brought this up back in 2022, was the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs, I thought that she was thinking about all of the taxpayers, right? And the Bengals and the NFL teams, they all make money no matter what. No matter who wins the Super Bowl, everybody wins. And to do something for the fans, I just thought was a great gesture. It would have been a great gesture. So I want to hear what their response is. I think at the very least, the Bengals owe the Hamilton County taxpayers and the fans a response, no matter what that response is, because they make money. They make guaranteed money every single year, no matter what. Do they really need to charge $100 for another event? I would say no, but I've got my thoughts about the NFL in general. I'll save them for maybe a little later in this conversation. But as Fanon brought up, we're also going to be going into the negotiations about the stadium. And it just makes me wonder, I'm going to throw this out here. Can Cincinnati survive without the Bengals?
Well, sure. Cincinnati can survive without the Bengals. There's no question about that. Now, do you want to? No. I mean, look, there are obviously a lot of things, a lot of benefits that you get from being a city that has an NFL franchise there. Make no mistake about it. If Cincinnati ever decided today they wanted the Bengals, there would be 5 or 6 other cities that would gladly, take the Brown family and the Bengals and welcome them with open arms, because, being an NFL city is something that a lot of places would covet and would gladly have. So let's not get it twisted. Cincinnati is fortunate to have, NFL football here. But could the city survive without them? Yes. I mean, it survived before the Bengals. It would survive after the Bengals. Of that, I had no doubt. But it would definitely be a loss. And just to follow up on that earlier point, Nathan, I mean, look, I get it from a business perspective. Every time you open a building, every time you cut on lights, every time you have air conditioning and whatnot going on, there are costs associated with that. And you got to think about, what it's going to cost you to open up. There are the real financial realities of running a business in that regard. But the Bengals, they got it, and I think that, that gesture of just opening it up again to fans who normally can't afford to come to a game, who maybe have never been in the stadium before and might be, so impressed by the exposure that they might actually try to purchase a game ticket when the Bengals are playing at home. I mean, those are the types of things that, that you have to think about. Not only that, but the goodwill that you engender, with the community by saying, hey, even as we're coming in and we're about to ask you for billions of dollars for these stadium renovations, here's a little give back. You gotta give something to get something. And I think it seems like the Bengals have a reputation for always having their hand out versus extending the hand in terms of inviting the community in. And I think they really need to take a look at that organizationally and do what they can to fix it. And this was a small thing, a very small thing that they could have done that would have carried, not saying it would have wiped the slate clean, but it would have been a good step toward erasing the bad image that the Bengals have of being cheap and out to rip off the taxpayers.
Can the city of Cincinnati survive without the Bengals? If I recall, and I got here in '93, if I recall, they survived without the Bengals from '89 until 2019. I mean, I'm just saying that's kind of what.
Watch it now, Fernand. You know I'm a fan. Watch it now.
But seriously, we have to acknowledge that this city has certainly experienced a significant increase in financial resources, in goodwill. I mean, this city has really risen in development and everything else over the past 30 years, and certainly having a world-class team here, and they are. I mean, they are a world-renowned team. People do watch them across the country. People are fans, and having them here has certainly contributed to that. But if they weren't here, we find another way to utilize the resources that we have on this river, like the soccer team, like the baseball team, like P&G, like this corporation that we have here, like the talent, the music. I mean, we have a lot of other things here, but certainly it would be a tough place in the first 5 or 10 years without the Bengals here after being here for so long.
Yeah, in the first 5 or 10 years, I wonder if our leadership has the will and the leverage from the public to negotiate a deal that's better for us. Or do most of us have this idea that no matter what the deal is, having the Bengals here is better than not having them here? And if you walk into a negotiation thinking like that, you always going to come up losing. You're always going to come up losing because you want them more than they want you. The Bengals threatened to leave many years ago. Honestly, I think we should have let them leave. And I think that if we had let them leave, by now we would have got another team and perhaps had a better deal that was better for the taxpayers in whatever that might be, right? I think we can all agree that the Hamilton County Stadium deal is a little bit lopsided and maybe a little bit is being generous. So I'm not so sure about that. I like to see the numbers on it. I like to see the numbers on exactly who makes money because the Bengals are here, right? I'm not saying no one makes money, but who's making the money? Is it trickling down to, everyday folks? I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to look at it in terms of, obviously the businesses and everything that are down and around the stadium that benefit from the crowds. I mean, a lot of the restaurants and bars and things of that nature are packed on Sundays when the Bengals are here in town. Parking is at a premium, and there are a lot of people who work those jobs. If you work at one of the bars or restaurants, you're getting tips, you're getting all sorts of things on game day. So I think from that vantage point, it does trickle down to the average everyday person from that standpoint. I mean, Nathan, the question you pose is one of those great questions that you don't know until you're forced to find out. Would the city be better off with the Bengals? Well, you may only get that answer if and when the Bengals leave. And I think this notion of if we lose the Bengals, that we would get another NFL franchise back, I think is another sort of fallacy, that it's not that easy to get NFL franchises to begin with. And, Cincinnati is not a large market, as it relates to professional football. Cincinnati is actually one of the smaller markets, and the Bengals are actually, if I'm not mistaken, the least valued team in the NFL. So they're not going to be a ton of people who are going to be eager to bring a professional sports franchise to Cincinnati when you can pick other places where, you've got a chance to build, a $5-6 billion stadium, and, you can fill it up with, like Jerry's World, with 100,000 fans or something like that. Just the realities of where we are in the Midwest, Cincinnati as a city, it's not as simple as saying, oh, well, we'll let the Bengals go and we'll just get somebody else to come in here. I think that's a mistake to think that it would be that easy.
I don't think it would be easy. But just look at it. Money goes where it's already made money. The Bengals have a history of football here. The Bengals have been here and been making money. So let's say they walk and go to another city because we can't come up with a deal that's best for us. Because of the Bengals' track record, I'm confident. It may not be in 5 years, it may not be in 10 years, but I'm confident somebody will see Cincinnati as a place for football and invest and perhaps give us a better deal. Like I said, like when you're in a relationship and you want them more than they want you, you're always going to lose. And that's how I look at the relationship with the Bengals. They make us feel good, they make us look good when they're winning. And I think people want to go with that no matter what. But that's just my thoughts. Fernand, any last thoughts?
Well, yeah. Well, just remember, any negotiation, there's going to be one side that has the greater weight of the authority or the greater weight of the position in any negotiation, whether that's in entertainment law, whether that's in the courtroom, whether that's in a relationship. It's very rarely 50-50 on anything. So in this instance, it's a matter of figuring out whether it's the county and the people and the population that has the greater weight, or whether it's the nationally recognized sports team that brings in attention and finances and excitement.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I believe that the Bengals need us more than we need them. That's what I disagree with that. At the end of the day, that's what I believe.
I disagree with that, Nathan. And here's why I disagree with that is the NFL is the 800-pound gorilla right now. And basically what these NFL owners know is, like I said, they bargain from a position of power because, as I said, the Bengals could pick up and leave and go to another city. And there's another NFL city that's so desperate to have an NFL franchise. It's like free agency in the NFL, right? You think like a team says, Joe Mixon, we're not going to pay you $12 million anymore a season because we don't think you're worth it. And the Houston Texans go out and say, fine, not only will we pay him, but we'll trade for him as well. So I think the same thing exists with NFL markets and cities. And I think the owners know, or at least feel like they have a lot of leverage, because if you won't give them what they want where they are, there are 5 or 6 other cities that will gladly do that. And if you won't, then fine, we'll leave. And so I think it's up to every community to decide, and that's where the taxpayers come in, is for every community to decide how far are they willing to go to maintain that NFL franchise and what's too steep. But make no mistake, the Bengals would have no problem finding a new home if they left. And I really don't think that any other owner who's looking at a franchise is saying, if Cincinnati doesn't want to come up off the money to have us here, like, we won't even consider bringing a franchise there. So I think as Fernand said, it's not 50-50 because the NFL is such a highly sought after commodity. I think that it's very tough to negotiate with a team. It's tough to negotiate with people who have options, right? I mean, that Fernand, you can, weigh in on that, whether that's true. If people got options, if you ain't going to pay me, I'm going to go to over here where they will.
I never go grocery shopping when I'm hungry.
Right. I get you. Let's keep it on the Bengals here. And I'm going to bring up something that a lot of people going to say is old stuff. Nathan, why are you bringing it up? I know the Bengal fans don't want to have this conversation. It's completely inconvenient because we like to shut our eyes and just consume our pleasure. I get it. But I'll be honest with you guys. I'm still not over this. Joe Burrow taking this photograph with Donald Trump I was watching the game over the weekend, and it was still sticking to me because, to me, this is a tacit endorsement, and there's no other way of looking at it. And I know people don't like to mix their sports and politics, but I do, right? And I'm just, how is this not an endorsement during an election year with everything that Donald Trump is, everything he represents? To stand up and take a picture like that with a man, to me, says something about you. Am I wrong? Am I being petty? What do you guys think?
Well, let me offer as the I'll say recovering elected official in the room. What have we seen when it comes to celebrities? Celebrities like to stay away from politics for the most part, but when they do jump into politics, as we've seen, they're not really shy about expressing who it is they support. We saw that when last week when Miley Cyrus, I think that's right, endorsed publicly Kamala Harris. Isn't that right? Was it Miley Cyrus?
Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift.
You're in trouble now for nine. Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Whatever. See, but Taylor Swift came out publicly and said it. Beyonce didn't say I'm supporting Kamala, but she offered her song. Hulk Hogan a little bit different, but he hopped on stage. People are not shy at celebrities when they support somebody. Just the other day, Patrick Mahomes would say, well, your girlfriend is out here supporting Donald Trump. Where are you at with it, Patrick? I'm not getting into it. I'm not supporting either. I'm just saying people need to research their stuff and vote. If Joe Burrow, with the bravado that he has and with the presence that he had, was seriously supporting and endorsing Donald Trump, I don't think there would be any ambivalence in his position. I think he would be very clear that I'm endorsing, I support, I'm backing him. It was a picture. What we know, we're all 90s babies and hip hop babies. One of the reasons that we know so many rappers are out here supporting Donald Trump is because of his presence in that community for as long as we were listening to rap music. A lot of them, that's the original basis for it. Now they're doing some other reasons that they're saying they're supporting him. And so I don't think that just taking a picture with him, somebody who's like that, who has a presence, who's a former president, even as bombastic and as polarizing and as ridiculous about eating dogs and cats he may be, I don't think that if Joe Burrow was actually endorsing him, he would have done less than, or he wouldn't have just taken a picture. I think he would retweet it, and I think he would say, I'm supporting this guy in this election.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Fanon. Where I come down on this is I just simply don't have any enough information to say what that picture was, and I don't think Joe Burrow has said, and as far as I know, he hasn't endorsed or said that he's a member of the MAGA faithful or anything like that. So I think it would be wrong to jump to that conclusion. Now, can one say, given the polarized nature of our society, was it a wise thing for him to take a picture like that? Yeah, one could probably say that, because when you do take that picture, you got to be in his position, his profile. You got to understand what kind of comes along with it. But it could be as simple as, I think this was taken at a UFC event that he and Nick Bosa were at, and Trump happened to be there. And it could be one of those things where you bump into somebody and they're just like, hey, hey, let's take a picture together. And maybe he was being gracious in that regard. I don't know. And none of us really know, because the details of, Joe Burrow hasn't said, I don't think Donald Trump has said. And so we're making a lot of assumptions based on a picture there. I'm sure there are probably some pictures out there that would show up with me with some people based on what I do for a living, that if somebody saw it, they'd be like, "Ooh, I didn't know he was down with them." And I'm like, I'm not. We just happen to be, in the same place, and I was being polite and took a picture with them. So, I don't feel any kind of way about it. And, as long as Joe Burrow hasn't said anything or done anything that, would be off-putting in a way in which you might lose a little respect for him or something like that, I think he deserves a little bit of the benefit of the doubt.
So Trump is an adjudicated rapist. He has a history of racism, called for the death penalty for the now exonerated five. Got a history of racism in housing. We can go back and forth about his policies, but we do know he's an insurrectionist, so he's anti-democracy. And he's running for an election. To take a picture with that man, it's worth 1,000 words. And in this case, it's just 3 words. To me, it's I support Trump. And it just, I can't understand why Bengal fans can't see that. I feel like people don't want to call it what it is, so they feel good about watching the game on Sunday. That's what I hear. Because a picture, I'm not taking a picture with somebody like that. I don't care about no graciousness or not. Because you're not in the world of Instagram and everything is visual. Who you take a picture of says a lot about you. I wouldn't do it, because whether I'm voting for him or not, what the man stands for is contrary to what I stand for too. So to me, whether Joe Burrow says something or not, and the fact that he hasn't said something tells me a lot as well. Because if he was like, well, hey, it was just a picture, I'd come out and say that. So clearly him not saying something is him saying something to me. And I just feel like Bengal fans don't want to deal with that. So it's like they live in this world where they live in a gray area rather than just calling out for what it is.
Yeah, I don't deny that there may be some Bengals fans that are kind of like what you say. But I think I'm just trying to look at this objectively. If I'm in Joe Burrow's position, there's no winning no matter what I say. If I say I'm not for Trump, then all of the MAGA people who are Bengal supporters who are going to hate him. If he says if he is for Trump, then all of the people who hate Donald Trump are going to hate him. So there's no winning answer to that question. So it's probably best just to say nothing and again leave it up to people's interpretation. But you can't tie him down. You can't tie him down one way or the other because he hasn't said anything. So basically, you're putting it on you, and he could be like, "Well, hey, that's not what I said. That's what you're saying." You know, people will say anything. And if I were advising him from a public relations standpoint, as I'm sure he has probably been advised, that's a landmine you don't need to step on. That's a self-inflicted wound. So I'm gonna let cats like Nathan Ivey go on ahead with no proof, muse and say what they think, but you're not gonna tie me down.
Yeah, but you know how you win, Kevin? You don't take the picture. That's how you do it. That's how you win. And then there's no conversation whatsoever. And you can, behind the scenes support who you want to support, but you just don't take the picture. And the fact that you do that says something to me about you. And as a man who can't separate his politics and his sports, I'm still on the fence about how I feel about, supporting him and by extension the team. I got to be honest.
I think that when it comes to celebrities, they're not shy about who they support. And I really believe that if he was actually endorsing him, he would come out and say that, just like these other celebrities, these rappers, these singers, these actors and actresses, these public figures, not officials, these public figures that do support one candidate or another, they're not shy about it. They speak it.
Yeah, but that's the difference is, like you brought up Taylor Swift. It's an endorsement. She didn't just take a picture and then not answer any questions. She said, I'm endorsing her. Had Joe Burrow said that, I'm like, on some levels, I'm like, okay, well, that's how he feel. Now I know. But it's like this game to me. It's definitely an endorsement, no doubt about it. It's a visual endorsement. Can we all agree with that? That visually it's an endorsement.
I can't agree with that. I can't agree with it being a visual endorsement for the very reason that I said. That means that, anytime you take a picture with anybody or a group shot or anything like that, it's to say, like, I think that's going a step too far. I'm not going to disagree with you that it says something, but the point I'm making is we don't know what it says because he hasn't said. Intent matters, Nathan. I mean, I think we can't move away from that. Like, what somebody's intentions are when they do something matters. And it doesn't just matter like how we want to look at it and how we want to interpret it. I feel what you're saying. And just real quick, you talked about the blindness of fans. I've always made this point, is that sports fans tend to be blind, period. I made this very point when the Bengals drafted Joe Mixon, 7 years ago. You remember when Joe Mixon got drafted, he was just coming off of that incident, that domestic violence incident, which was the reason why he dropped in the draft and everybody.
I remember.
Yeah. And there were a lot of people who were like, I'll never root for Joe Mixon, or I'm going to quit being a Bengals fan and all of this kind of stuff. And I said then, Nathan, the first touchdown he scores for the Cincinnati Bengals, nobody is going to remember that. And for 7 years, when Joe Mixon was running well and the Bengals were winning and making it to the Super Bowl, you never heard about that domestic violence incident again from Cincinnati fans again. Here's the reality about how most sports fans operate. They want their teams to win. They may not like it. They may not like the character or the actions of everybody there. They may complain about it. People are complaining about Jamar Chase right now. But the first time he catches a 60, 70-yard touchdown and the Bengals win and he's grittying, nobody's going to be talking about his contract, right? So sports fans, I think, are fickle. At the end of the day, they want their teams to win. They're going to cheer for guys. And, this politics and these other things that we talk about, I'm talking about for the diehard sports fans. I'm not just talking about the casual fan or the Johnny come latelys. I'm talking about the people who have been with these teams for years and are diehards. Man, this is my opinion, but the morals go away when it comes to the wins and losses. That's just my thought.
Oh, you're right. I agree completely.
Well, let me ask this, and I just don't recall who shared the picture. Where was the picture shared to? Was it shared by Joe Burrow, or was it shared by Donald Trump, or was it shared by the person that took it? I just don't recall. Because
Yeah,
if it was said by Joe Burrow, I'd probably have a different position. Me standing with my guy. But if it was somebody that happened to be at the same place he was, snapped a picture and took it, and we live in a visual age, everybody has a cell phone and a video camera going live at every time, at every moment. Who shared it? Where was that picture published to or by? I don't know.
I think it's all fair questions. I do think the Chase situation is different. Like this is different.
No, I'm not saying it's the same. I'm not comparing apples and apples. I only use that to say how sports fans will say things, but at the end of the day, when you perform on the field, when you win, all of that stuff goes by the wayside. It does.
Yeah, but I'm a sports fan, right? I follow the Bengals. And this situation with Joe Burrow is not going to the wayside with me because I'm still like, you standing here tacitly endorsing this man who's done all these things. What does that say about you? And then if I'm supporting you, what does that say about me? I don't care if you throw for 10,000 yards. I still got a problem with this.
So you're gonna disavow the team because of one player on the team. So it's
maybe I'm that
Bengals,
principles. Maybe yes, I might, and I struggle with it. I'm struggling with it. Literally, I don't know. Is it fair? Is it not fair? I'm struggling with it because I can be that politically petty if that's how you want to look at it. Yeah, I can be.
And I'm just saying, I don't think most sports fans or most sports fans of their teams are not that petty. They're not.
Right. I know that.
I mean, as much as people complained about Colin Kaepernick, 49ers fans didn't stop going to 49ers games. I mean,
some of them probably did, though. You know, there was fans saying they was burning jerseys and disavowing the team. Some of them may have. I don't know.
But I don't think the 49ers lost no money. I guess that's my point.
But if those fans were like, look, I'm not going to support the 49ers as long as Colin Kaepernick is here, then that's their right. Now, I think it's crazy. That's their right. And this is kind of similar to that. Like, you taking the pictures with this man, this, what did Kamala say? You taking the pictures with this man, and now I'm supposed to come support you? And that's against everything I stand for? I can't get with it.
Let me ask you this question.
Yep.
So do you believe on the Bengals 53-man roster that they're Trump supporters?
Probably, yeah.
Do you believe on every NFL team in the country they're Trump supporters?
There might be, yeah.
Every NBA team?
Could be.
Okay. So if we're going to say
every hockey team, we can't forget hockey.
Yeah, every hockey team, every baseball team. I guess my point is that on every team in the NFL, whether they're vocal about their support or they're quiet behind the scenes doing it, you've got people who have political leanings. Tom Brady, as I recall, was very out front. This is the GOAT, the greatest player of all time by NFL standards, was a Trump supporter. You know, you got Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if he's a Trump supporter per se, but, you know, he's been a big anti-vaccine guy. Like, you have these players, some players every now and then express their political views. So I think, like, you know, you can't – I get we're talking about Joe Burrow because it's Cincinnati and is where we live, but the reality is Joe Burrow, if he does support Donald Trump, ain't the only Bengal on the team that supports Donald Trump. And so if we're going to start to say our fan loyalty is based on political leanings of players on our team, then we ain't gonna like nobody.
And that's okay for people that are that principled. Hey, listen, guys, I started watching the NFL for years because of what went down with Colin Kaepernick, the way they blackballed him. I took it out on the whole league. I wasn't watching none of it. I just came back to it. I'm still somewhat reluctant and hesitant about how I feel about the NFL as an entity, how they treat it, how they deal in these different cities like Cincinnati, and the role they play in our society, how they dealt with Colin Kaepernick. So, yeah, but it's one thing to have your personal beliefs. It's another to take a picture and put it out there for people. And when you do that, it comes into the public square and it's open to public opinion. People might say, hey, I don't want to support you because of that. You know, and that's just the way it goes. Let's move on here. Let's talk about Diddy, Sean P. Diddy Combs, who was arrested last night. He was arrested for sex trafficking, racketeering, and kidnapping. And those are all the details that I have to this point. Fernand, I want to get your thoughts. I mean, you're our legal guy, former judge, lawyer. racketeering, what does that mean? Do you have a sense of what specifically those charges are? And then what can we expect next, to happen with the whole P. Diddy situation?
Yeah, can't stop, won't stop. So look here. What we know is, because it's been so public, is that, Diddy has been under investigation for a long time, under federal grand jury investigation. What exactly does that mean? That means that, we hear about criminal charges being filed, and sometimes we see it in real time. So there is a DUI, somebody gets killed, they're picked up, taken out to the JC, and they're held there. There are also white collar crimes where people are investigated literally for months or years behind the scenes, where they're subpoenaing records and they're talking to witnesses, and a grand jury of regular citizens are asked to review all of this stuff for so long. Well, this has been a months-long grand jury investigation since Cassie filed that lawsuit, maybe even before. What we do know is that was what brought it to light for the public, that there was some stuff that needed to be looked at. So the feds decided to impanel a grand jury to take a look at whatever evidence they had. We know there was a raid by the FBI. They took out boxes and boxes of information. What we can expect is that there were witnesses that were called before that grand jury in order to hear testimony about some of the stuff we read about in those salacious allegations and lawsuits. We saw other lawsuits coming out. And so these allegations, or these now, so what the grand jury does, they hear the evidence, and then the prosecutor says, all right, here are all of the potential charges that you can consider now that you've heard this evidence. Don't mean that he's guilty, but it does mean there's enough to believe that there's smoke and fire in the same place. There's a campfire that needs to be put out. And so once the grand jury says, this is what we see, this is what we believe, now it's official. What happened yesterday is it became official. And so whatever the testimony was, whatever the videos that they recovered and took from search warrants, whatever witnesses testified to, all of those things allowed them to come up with these several charges, which include kidnapping, which is just removing or keeping someone in a place that they weren't supposed to be in against their will. The racketeering piece is a kind of a tough one to explain without knowing what it is that they're claiming. Racketeering is generally that you got money from doing some illegal stuff. So it could be, what we know is they're talking about sex trafficking. So it could be that he was, in a criminal enterprise to gain money from doing illegal things, which is prostitution and kidnapping and relocating people in other places when they had no business doing that. And there may even be some underage allegations. But there's a lot. But we know from the nature of the charges that this is all consistent with what Cassie was saying happened. And let me just say, when it came out that there had been these negotiations for months and months, and he was rejecting it and wasn't paying nothing, and then they filed the lawsuit, and the very next day they settled for. I wish my cases did like. I wish that I could argue with someone for like months and months, and then I file my lawsuit the next day. They say, "Okay, here's $1 million." I wish that happened like that. That doesn't happen like that. So as a lawyer, that raised all kind of flashing red lights for me, because that said, I don't want this to go any further. I don't want other people to have lawsuits coming out after me. I just want to bury this thing. So let me just pay out whatever I can to make that go away. But that's not what happened, because once that became a public filing, all of those things became fodder for investigation and curiosity. And they've now culminated themselves in him being arrested. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more names about to be flying around. There's a lot of people who are about to be filing more actions. There's a lot more that's about to happen because of the presence of Sean Combs, Sean Puff Daddy Combs, P. Diddy, in the music world, but also internationally with his businesses and everything else. This is not open. This is just starting.
Yeah. It's funny. So I went to the Funny Bone this weekend, and Bill Bellamy was performing there. And this was actually a part of his act, one of the things that he talked about. And he made a point in that, in his comedy act, that while joking about it comedically, I think is the truth. And he made the statement that, when the feds bring a case against you, right, like it's almost pretty much a wrap. I mean, the conviction rate in most felony cases is like 98%, right? Like very few federal cases ever get settled, or if you go to trial, or don't get settled, but go to trial and wind up in an acquittal of the individual who's accused. And largely that's because the feds will let you do what you do for years, watching you as they build a case. And when they do finally slam the door on you, like when they raid not just one house, but they raided all of Diddy's cribs. As Bill Bellamy said, they even raided the dog house. They arrested the dog, they said, when the feds went in there. And so, I mean, I think given that history, the feds generally don't move in on you until they've got the goods. And I look at how, people in Hollywood who are close to him are sort of responding and kind of acting towards this. And Bellamy himself has said there are a lot of people in Hollywood who are nervous right now because there are going to be a lot of people who are going to get exposed when the evidence, the videos and things of that nature come out. Like, there's going to be a lot of blowback, not just on Diddy, but on other people, whether that's embarrassing information released that's going to change a lot of people's lives. Cat Williams even alluded to this in his interview with Shannon Sharpe. So I think, obviously we all should reserve judgment, until the facts come out. He has the right, as anybody else does, to a fair trial and the presentation of evidence, should he choose to go that route. And so I'm kind of sitting back, taking in all this information. I'm going to say, let's just let this thing play out before, you jump out there on that raft and say he's guilty or put your name on the fact that he's innocent. And this is another attack on a black man. I think we got to be careful about that kind of stuff and just sit back and see what happens.
Is this just another attack on a black man, in your opinion, right now?
So let me offer, and maybe it's the hazard of kind of my professional career. Obviously, I've been a prosecutor. I was a judge for more of my career than I wasn't a judge. And in that position, as a prosecutor, I advocated on behalf of victims, people who were being victimized by individuals who were exploiting them in some way, either physically or even sexually. As a judge, I had to pass judgment on individuals of all stripes, of all genders, of various ages. And so I can't jump to any conclusion that says because there's a black man that has been indicted or has been accused of a crime, that somehow it's an attack because he's a black man who's accused of a crime. Because there are victims potentially who are involved in this, who were victimized, there are laws that say you don't do certain stuff. And if those laws were violated, I can't say it's because he's black. It may be a truth that he is black and he's being prosecuted, but not necessarily because he's black. That's the hazard of my observations at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, Fanon, can you clarify something for me? You were talking about kidnapping. So kidnapping isn't just I take you from A and take you to B. It's you're trying to leave and I won't allow you to leave. Is that correct?
It could be. And kidnapping has several layers. But essentially what we talk about generally in kidnapping, and I haven't seen the allegations here, I haven't seen the indictment, but generally kidnapping in the general context means you remove someone from one place and take them to another. Unlawful restraint is normally what we see when somebody just won't let somebody leave where they are. But kidnapping is generally removing or moving against somebody's will.
Okay, got it.
And so what we see, a lot of that, we see that in the context of what they call, I think they used to call it white slavery or something like that, where you take young girls and you take them from one state to another state. And because you didn't have the ability to relocate them, that would be considered kidnapping, as opposed to, no, you can't leave the house. That's unlawful restraint.
Yeah. And Nathan, on that point, just kind of talking about the victims, let's not forget that Diddy also defamed Cassie, called her a liar, said all sorts of all of the allegations that she was making against him were untrue. And then the video comes out. And now all of a sudden he's changed his tune and he was on drugs and he's all of this and this mea culpa after he had spent years, calling this woman, hey, she's just out to get the bag, all of this other kind of stuff. So let's not forget before we rush into this issue of whether this is a attack on another black man and what that he has been proven, at least to this point, to be dishonest at best. And I'm being diplomatic in my statement of that he's already shown that you can't trust anything he said, because again, this guy maintained a posture for years about what this woman was saying he did to her. And it was only when undeniable video evidence came out that he then tried to clean it up. And so that right there says how much of what he actually says in his defense can you actually trust? right? So I think like those are the types of things that I take into consideration when I'm looking at a case. Like I don't immediately go to the emotions of the race card and that sort of thing on things, because I think when we do that in cases where it doesn't need to apply, it hurts the cases where it actually does apply. And they're black people that do bad things. They're white people that do bad things. I mean, I think we saw Epstein, and he was about to get his due, but he chose to take himself out, so he was about to be on the skillet as well for the things that he did. So you can't just say, like in this case, that it's a selective black person because they got Epstein and Weinstein and all of these cats too that were that had to pay the piper for their crimes.
Yeah. To be clear, I'm not making that argument. I stand with the victims. And typically, I take a wait and see approach. And that's what I took with P. Diddy. It's sad that we live in a world where it's almost like money insulates people. Like you get somebody like a P. Diddy and people allege something, people automatically assume it's just all about the bag and there's nothing to it. That's really, really sad. But to the point you just made, Kevin, like, for years and years and years, you're defaming Cassie, saying she's just in it for the money. And then we see the video. Which begged the question, why didn't we see this video years before that? Which, maybe, I don't know why. Maybe he paid someone off or who knows why. But, P. Diddy is he's one of the fundamentals of hip hop. I think we can all agree on that, right? Like his influence in hip hop makes hip hop what it is. And so for me, I don't rock with Bill Cosby anymore. I don't do anything that Bill Cosby was associated with. I don't rock with anything R. Kelly was associated with. And I'm prepared to do the same thing with P. Diddy. But wow, that's a big blow. So is that what we're prepared to do? Cancel P. Diddy? No more P. Diddy at the barbecues and birthday parties and reunions? Is that where we are? Because it kind of feels like Diddy's already been canceled because we saw that video.
Yeah. I think it's very similar to the R. Kelly situation. I mean, and even what we were just talking about with the Joe Burrow situation, it's going to be selective. People are going to make those choices. There are a lot of people who mute R. Kelly, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't say like there's some places and some spaces that I'm at that I still see R. Kelly being played and people listening to R. Kelly. And I mean, I think the thing that's kind of hard to erase from your consciousness is like for many people, these artists have been the soundtrack of their lives. I mean, I know, a lot of my, 20 something years were when I in my 20s and my college years and coming up, those were prime Bad Boy, Notorious B.I.G., years, formative years. And so these artists are like same thing with R. Kelly, like they're a part of our lives. And so I think for many people, I mean, shoot, R. Kelly could have been some people's wedding songs or whatever. I mean, and so when you have those sorts of things tied to memories and key points in your life, it can sometimes be hard for some people to separate that. The Cosby Show, for example, I mean, we all came up on that, man. That was like the epitome at that time of Black excellence, because you did not see Black people on TV being portrayed successfully like the Huxtables were, right? It was like, you see Good Times or, people from the projects and stuff like that. But they were the first successful family that you saw. So, I mean, these people, for whatever flaws they had from an entertainment and arts perspective, were a big part, of our lives. And I think people are going to selectively decide for themselves whether they want to continue to be down with it or not.
Yeah, I'm one of those folks, and I don't have any shame in admitting it, that I love R. Kelly's music. I love to dance. I'm from Gary, Indiana, up near Chicago, and stepping is part of the fabric. And so when I'm at a club, I mean, when I used to go to the club last week, when I'm at the club and I hear some good stepping music that has R. Kelly behind it or his old beats from Chocolate Factory, I'm on the floor. And I'm sorry, but when Michael Jackson, who we know, touched on them little kids, we still were down with Michael Jackson because he was exonerated in that trial because they couldn't find proof beyond a reasonable doubt that he actually gave Jesus I mean, what we're talking about historically is an acknowledgement that there is a separation between the talent. I mean, let's talk about it. We love Prince, who wore 7-inch high heels and lace and was into some freaky stuff. Nobody can deny that. But
Don't
folks
put
still
Prince. That's
do.
different though. Ain't nothing
Why
wrong
is it
being
different?
freaky and wearing high heels and you into lace and the color purple. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Don't bring that into this conversation about P. Diddy and R. Kelly.
Hey, my boy
I'm just
Randy
saying
is. Hey, my boy
I'm just
Randy
saying
is
there's
from
some things
Minneapolis.
that
On that point, my boy, just real quick, I'm gonna let you get back in. This is just funny. My boy from Randy is from Minneapolis, and he always talks about how even hardcore Prince had hardcore street brothers coming in fluffy, lacy shirts when he broke that out. So he was a culture trendsetter. So we can't get on Prince for that. He set the new paradigm. He even had the street brothers dressing that way.
don't remind me. Don't remind me. But the idea that we are obligated, and many people do, and I don't condemn, criticize, or look down on anybody who does it. I just say I love the music. I can love the music without loving the actions that this person has taken. It's kind of like there are, when we're talking about reading and philosophy, there are some ideals of some things that I appreciate in some people's writings because it makes sense to me, and it's helpful and it's theoretically sound, that I look in their histories and the stuff that they did. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's not somebody who I would have had friend or over at my house. But I appreciate what they're explaining, and I need to understand it so that I understand the global way that this world works. So when it comes to music and entertainment, I don't stop watching Different World. Who is the producer and executive director of Different World? Bill Cosby. Why? Because I had a historically Black college experience that was born in school days, but it was lived through school. It was lived through Different World. I'm not going to give that up because Bill Cosby did some real ill stuff and ended up, going to prison. That doesn't take away from the creative genius or the skill or the entertainment that was provided through what he was doing.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'm torn though, because I don't listen to R. Kelly music anymore. But the Chocolate Factory was fire though. I mean, man. And I said for years, and it's the same thing. And Kevin, you brought this point up when it came to sports. Like people can have critiques about Joe Mixon, but as soon as you get out there and perform and your team wins, you forget all about it. It's the same thing with R. Kelly. You can have a problem with R. Kelly, but if he makes a fire album that makes you want to dance, you forget all about it. Why? What does that say about it? Do we just not have morals anymore? Are we just selfish creatures that only care about what we like?
I don't think it's that. I think it goes back to the Maya Angelou quote, right? It's like, most people won't remember things that you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I think like that's what music, art, and entertainment does. It's a feeling, it's a moment in time. Like I've always said, like music is a time machine, man. It will transport you back, and you hear a song and it will instantly transport you back to a time that's either a fond memory or maybe even in some cases something that's painful for you. But it's all about like our connection to the art is how it makes us feel. And it's hard for one to detach themselves from that if we're just being real. Right. I remember when we were talking about there was a brother, I can't remember his name, but he was like a psychologist or doctor to pro athletes. And when the whole OJ Simpson thing came up, he made this statement. He said, hey, if you want to hate OJ over here for what he did to Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman, that's fine. But over here, where he did what he did as an NFL running back, and accomplishment and the excellence that he portrayed over here, like that is what it is. You can't erase that. You can't get rid of that because of what he did over here. If you want to hate him over here, fine. But over here, where he did what he did, like you can't. He didn't say you can't, but I think his point was we shouldn't hate him over here for what, or feel guilty about enjoying the entertainment and joy that person may have brought to us over here. Like saying we enjoy that doesn't mean that we excuse the horrible things that somebody else did over here. Because the reality is most people are a combination of a lot of different things. I mean, I think if we're all being honest, if anybody could hold up an X-ray to our lives, that all of us have had moments where we've done or said things that we're not proud of, that if it got exposed would totally change the way that people viewed us and thought about us, and they may not want to buy our brand anymore. So and Nathan, I mean, you frown up about that,
Maybe.
but you ready to divorce Joe Burrow over a picture, bruh? I mean,
But I'm consistent though. Like I'm saying, but I'm consistent through whether sports or entertainment. You
No,
can
I'm
do
just saying, like
something.
it don't take much for people to get off your brand. You might not think it's a big thing, but people
Right.
get offended over all sorts of things these days and want to cancel people and move off of them. Just simply, if I say something you don't agree with, then
I
it's
know,
like,
but
I'm
that's
cool
not
with
this kid's. We're not just talking about P. Diddy just saying something. We're not just talking about R. Kelly just
I
saying
get that.
something. That's different. We're not talking about them taking a picture with somebody. You know, with R. Kelly's case, he was a predator. How
Yeah,
do
no,
I
I'm not
go and listen
likening.
to the
I'm not
music of a
likening.
predator and still have respect for myself as a man?
Yeah,
How do I
Yeah,
do that?
I'm not likening the events. I just say that as a matter of fact, in saying that people cancel you or get rid of you for all sorts of reasons these days. I'm not likening the incidents and saying that they're similar.
And some are valid and some are less valid.
Saying that people will cancel you for whatever these days, right?
Well,
So
are you guys making the argument? Are you guys making the argument that there's nothing that P. Diddy could have ever done that'll ever make you stop listening to his music? That there's nothing that R. Kelly could have ever done that'll make you say, you know what? I'm not rocking with nothing this guy ever created because the music makes me feel a certain way. Is that what you're arguing?
Well, don't get it twisted. I'm not hopping in my car. I don't like Mace. I ain't hopping in my car turning on Mace. I'm not hopping in the car turning on looking for Diddy mixtapes. And in the same way, I'm not going out purchasing, spending money towards, or buying new R. Kelly music. I'm not, and I think we need to make that distinction. I'm not going out supporting, going to a movie somebody made whose philosophical beliefs I think are destructive to my own. But when I'm talking about reliving or re-engaging with those times in my life that I've appreciated the entertainment that those individuals have provided, yeah, I can't. And like Kevin said, I can't divorce myself from my observations or experiences. I can't unlive my life. And so if Chocolate Factory came out during a time when certain things were going on that were good for my life and I enjoy hearing those songs again, that's great. But if R. Kelly came out with a new CD, I'm down on Cell Block L. I'm not going to buy it because I'm not going to support him at this point financially. And that's what I'm not going to do with these folks who are doing criminal things and who are hurting kids and stuff like that. I'm not going to support them. But I'm also not going to, because I'm not able to, unlive experiences that they have given me that I enjoy.
And here's my point, Nathan. And what you said is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that there's not anything that there's nothing that somebody could do that wouldn't turn me off. I think, as I said from the beginning, everybody has to make their own choice in terms of what their morals, their values, and their principles are. I think the problem that we have in this country is that everybody has an absolute on what's moral and what's principle based on how they believe. And if somebody else doesn't believe the same thing that you believe, then there's something wrong with them. So what I would say is, hey, if you don't want to support R. Kelly, if you feel like listening to R. Kelly is supporting him and endorsing what he did, cool, that's your principle. I respect you for that. Stand on that. Talk about that. But if somebody else wants to listen to R. Kelly, to step in the name of love because it's a song that has some significance for them, I think it's a mistake to say that because that person listens to that song that they ought to feel guilty, or because they listen to it, that it's an endorsement of the actions of R. Kelly. I think that's a step too far. And that's the problem in our country right now. I think that's a problem in our country right now with our politics, is because we live on those extremes that don't allow people to exist in areas of gray. It's got to be black or white. You either ain't down with R. Kelly, and that means if you listen to his music, you're part of the problem. No, part of the problem is that attitude, right? That it has to be black or white. Like, we exist in shades of gray. I think you said that earlier. The truth of reality is that we're all trying to figure it out. And we all try to live in that area of like, man, I don't want to support this cat, but man, that was the jam. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look, in an honest moment, it's okay to say that, because that's honestly how most people sort of feel about that. And so I think, like, we shouldn't get into this judgment game. We just ought to respect where people are.
I think TNT says something that is pretty profound, and it kind of explains some of what we're talking about, even with Joe Burrow, which is people make excuses for the things they want. Period. And that's how I look at it. You know, man, you want to support Joe Burrow, you're gonna make excuses for him. You want to support P. Diddy, you're gonna make excuses for him. It's just the way it is. And we do that with people that we like. We see that with Trump. We see it with Kamala. That's just the way human beings are.
But is me listening to the music? See, that's what I'm saying. Like, is me listening to the music making an excuse for him? Why can't I say I hate what Diddy did, but damn, that was the jam? Like, can't two things be true at
But why
once?
does the jam mean that much? That's the
It's
why
not-
does the
it's not
jam mean that much?
It's not that it necessarily means that much, Nathan. Just it doesn't mean like my world's gonna end if I don't listen to this song. But it's like if it comes on the radio, like I should be okay if I'm riding in my car and I say I want to listen to that. Like I shouldn't feel like I'm supporting Diddy or I'm endorsing what he did because I'm listening to the song on the radio. I personally think that that's a bridge too far.
Either you stand
And
on
some people
business or
might
you don't.
disagree. But again, that I respect people who feel like I'm not going to do that. I get that. That's you. That's how you feel. Stand on that if that's you. But don't vilify me or other people if they say I don't want to turn that off. You know, not because I endorse what Diddy did, but I like the song.
Yeah. For me, either you stand on business or you don't, period. Some things are black and white. Either I endorse it or I don't. Either I support it or I don't. You know, there are a lot of gray areas, but there's a lot of black and white areas as well. But this leads to the next question, which is, could Diddy, I think it's a little bit early, so we might come back to this, but could Diddy make a comeback?
Mm-mm.
I don't see how. He can't make a comeback any more than R. Kelly can make a comeback. You know, one of the things that I talk about with some of my clients and I've dealt with over the years is whatever comes out on page one, even if there's a retraction, and Kevin, this is kind of in your remit, the retraction may come out 2 weeks later, but it's on page 30. But people remember what's on page one. So whatever happens from this point on, Diddy is branded with the images of him beating Cassie down, of having all these allegations of all these wild things that he has going on, of being disrespectful, being a bully, all this stuff. And he, even if later it's proven that that's not true, we can't unhear, unsee, unknow what it is that we've seen, heard, and known now for the past 7 or 8 months. But let me ask you a quick question, Nathan, just real quick. How did you feel about the fact that Tupac implicitly slept with Faith, who was married to Biggie at the time? I'm sorry, I'm just saying, because, you know, I mean, I'm a Biggie fan, and that was just real disrespectful, but I still listen to Tupac.
I wouldn't put it in the same category, but, you know,
Because people excuse what they want, Nathan, because people excuse what they want. That's
well,
why
let me flip it.
Wait,
Let me flip this then. I think y'all searching to try to get me on something, but you picked the wrong one. You picked the wrong one. So let me flip this on you. Do you think that what Fanon just brought up about Tupac allegedly sleeping with Biggie's wife while they were married is in the same universe as what we're talking about with P. Diddy and R. Kelly? Because I don't.
Well, I certainly do think it's wrong.
I don't, Nathan, but again, it makes my point of what I was saying earlier, that for some people it might. If you've been somebody who's been cheated on by somebody like that, if you've been in that situation, oh no, that's a non-starter for you because of your personal experience. So apples to apples, it may not be the same thing, but if you've been messed over, if you've been cheated on in that same type of situation, that your experience gonna make that on par with what you're talking about. So that's what I'm saying, man. Like, you know, everybody is different.
I think y'all stretching on that. When Charlene writes, they were consenting adults. You talking about consenting adults. Tupac didn't allegedly force himself on anybody, as are the allegations with R. Kelly dealing with minors, and also Bill Cosby. And we just don't know what P. Diddy, what the charges are going to end up being. So it ain't those two are not even in the same universe, in my opinion.
Bill Cosby's defense was that these were consenting adults. I mean, let's be honest. Now, court ruled otherwise.
Rapists always say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Always say that.
That's right.
Nathan,
that's right.
You fail to realize that people live in alternative universes. In your universe, it ain't the same. But I think we know everybody don't live in the same universe. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Everybody don't live in the same reality that we all like to think they live in.
You know, in terms of the question, could P. Diddy make a comeback? Sadly, the jury is still out. We don't know what these charges are going to be, so let's wait and see what actually happens. Is he convicted? That video is damning. You know, he can't explain that away. And to this point, that's the biggest hurdle in terms of him making a comeback. And by comeback, meaning him being accepted back in society and kind of moving past that. But unfortunately, he's a very wealthy man. And to this point, his victims have been black people, like non-white people. And that's a recipe for it don't really that matter that much. If he comes back out and, you know, does something for the community or makes a hot song or does something that people really gravitate to, they might be like, forget all of that. I like this song or I like what he's doing right now. But I think it's too early for me to really definitively say. So we'll just kind of follow that and come back to it,
Yeah.
which is sad commentary in our culture.
Yeah, I
Quite
don't think
honestly.
that I don't think that, you know, if Diddy is found guilty, first of all, by the time if he ever gets out of jail, or by the time he gets out of jail, I think his time will have passed. I think that'll be a pretty much irrelevant conversation, you know, at that point about whether or not, you know, he'll be able to make a comeback. To Fanon's point, if he does manage to get away with it somehow or another, and it's proven the allegations are proven to be false, or he's acquitted of the charges against him. It's like Fanon said, people are always going to believe what they want to believe, and I think that it's going to be very hard for him to reassume any kind of respectable position, you know, in the public eye that would be anything. I mean, I think if he is fortunate enough, and if he had good sense, if he was fortunate enough to get away with this, you know, take your gains and what you got and just, you know, slide on into obscurity and live the rest of your life and hope that folks kind of forget about it. Like that would be the smart thing for him to do, rather than trying to get back up, you know, in the public face and kind of reclaim what he had. That's gone. I don't think he ever gets that back. And if he's guilty, I don't think he should be able to get that back.
Let's move on. Let's talk about JD Vance and what's happening in Springfield, Ohio. You know, we're in Cincinnati, so this is in our neck of the woods. For folks who don't know, essentially you had the president and his vice president, the former president Donald Trump, and his running mate JD Vance, who is a current senator in Ohio. It's strange that a senator, an elected official, would be doing these kind of things. That were spreading some very vicious lies about Haitians eating dogs. For me, it amounts to yet another racist strategy, vilifying brown people, and to me, by extension, black people as well. And there's been all kinds of chaos, bomb threats, schools have been closed. The mayor of Springfield has come out and said there's really there's no truth to what's being said. The woman who was initially involved with the initial social media post and saying that somebody was eating somebody's pets. She's come out and apologized and says that she feels sorry for what has happened and she supports the Haitian community. Where are black people as it relates to Haitians? Do we support Haitians? And what do you guys think about JD Vance in a recent interview admitting that, hey, if we have to make up a story to get our point across, that is what we're going to do. What do you guys think?
I think that this is a perfect example of really the danger of social media. If you look at this whole entire episode, she put this out there, and you know, and I was talking to someone I'm very close to, who's a younger person, and who was basically justifying it, saying, "Well, I saw a city council meeting, you know," and basically suggesting that people were actually at a city council meeting verifying that this happened. And I'm like, have you ever been to a Cincinnati city council meeting? I used to go back in the day when folks would go down there dressed up in all kind of crazy outfits and just say crazy stuff. But somebody put this out as a post, as a kind of a joke. My friend's pet is missing and her neighbors took it, or something like that. As you said, she now has recanted and said, I was just putting some out there. But who took that and ran with it? Elon Musk. Put it out to his 200 million followers. Of course, some of whom grabbed that, and some conservative commentators grabbed that and retweeted. And all of a sudden it was true, simply because somebody put it out on social media. And it has grown like the horrible wildfire that we see in California every other week. Because somebody posts something, it's accepted as true on social media. I remember seeing a post some years ago, and it was a quote from Abraham Lincoln. and he was saying, you can't believe everything you read on Facebook. That was a quote from Abraham Lincoln with his picture on it. And that was a suggestion that if you see it there, folks are going to believe it. And this is the perfect example of the danger of that fake news, of that if I read it, I'm going to believe it. If it's in line with what I want to believe, I'm going to accept it without verifying what exactly is the source of this information. I think it's ridiculous. And where do black folks stand with Haitians? Haitians are black folks. But I mean, just as we are not a monolithic people, I don't know that there's a monolithic basis of support or criticism for Haitians as a people, but I do know what happens to them happens to us because we are black folks.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan, I'm gonna try to be brief with this, but I got a lot to say, on this subject. And Fanon said a lot of, what I would say about. I mean, I think where this all starts is our responsibility as individuals to read, to verify, to check facts, and not just take everything that we see on social media as the gospel. Spread it, share it. One of the things about authentic fake news and what these things are designed to do is to elicit emotional responses in us that get us to react, have knee-jerk reactions, and just immediately respond to things. That's what gets the algorithm up. That's what get things popping on social media. The more likes and the more comments that you get on things, and emotional posts do that, 100%. And I've always said that jokes and sarcasm don't come across well written, right? Like if I'm talking, you can kind of see my facial expressions, kind of see my voice. If I'm being sarcastic, you can see my body moving. Sarcasm and jokes, unless it's blatant, don't come across well, or often, even sometimes at all, when things are written down and people see things, they read things, and they respond to it. So I think the first thing is upon us to calm down. And when we see something that sounds ridiculous or sounds like too wild to be true, like instead of jumping on that because it may confirm some bias or something that we already have or support a narrative that we want to go along with, we got to take a moment to pause and say, wait a minute, let me check this out. Let me make sure this is actually factual. Let me go see if like a legitimate news organization has reported on this. Because I brought this up in the last time, what's become a big part of our job now in the media is chasing down things that have gone on social media and verifying whether it's true or not. Like this is what we do. Like even on this story, I think I mentioned this in our last episode. When it came up in our meeting discussion at work, I was pissed off because I'm like, this is crap. Like, why are we even dedicating resources to even report on this? Like, I knew when I heard it was garbage. But by then it was already too late. It had made the rounds on social media. It had become this thing. A couple of conservative publications had picked it up without verifying the information and just going straight with the report off of what was social media and putting it out there. And so then it became this thing. Well, now this thing is out here. Now we got to respond to it and give people the real information. Whereas years before, if something like that, before social media, if something like that happens, it don't even get out broadly like that. And if the media is aware of it, we don't even report it because it's garbage. Now we're in the position of where we're having to chase down and tell people that garbage is garbage. Like that's part of what we're having to do now is to verify or debunk stuff that people see on social media. Now it's good in one perspective that a lot of news tips and things that lead to legitimate stories do start on social media and things that people are sharing and talking about and reporting from their communities and whatnot. And so there's a good element to it, but then there's also this bad element of there's just a lot of crap out there. So I would just always encourage people, like if you see something and your first inclination is to get mad or to get upset about it, that ought to be a red flag for you to be like, before I comment on this, before I post on it, let me go do a Google search, and find out if what I'm about to respond to is actually factual. When we get in our feelings, we see stuff and we just want to immediately jump in the conversation. I've seen people do it with a headline. Like I'll post something and within 5 seconds of me posting it, somebody's already commented. And I'm thinking like, how can you possibly comment on a story? I know you ain't read that in 5 seconds. So how
Right.
can you possibly have something to say about something you haven't even read? So we kind of have to, as consumers, as responsible citizens, we got to do our part to slow down and make sure that we're not a part of creating this toxic ecosystem that exists that allows nonsense like this to go viral.
Good or bad, I think that's sort of a change in responsibility of legacy media. You become fact checkers to what's happening on social media. And I'm glad that you're there because we need it. We need credible places where people can go and get facts and not always a spin. But, one thing that this stuff is designed to do is divide us. And that unfortunately is more of what I hear about the whole immigration conversation across the board. Like there are real serious conversations that we could and should be having. But we talking about, and again, Kevin, you made this point in the last pod. We talking about, Haitians eating dogs. There's real issues in Springfield. They might need real resources and a real conversation, but we're talking about propaganda. And I from a distance, we all look the same to the others. They don't know if we Haitian or Jamaican or whatever we are. From a distance, we all look the same. So there's a lot of energy putting out there to separate Black people from immigrants. And unfortunately, some of that's coming from Black people. And, we get a lot of it from Chicago. I hear people in Cincinnati who ain't never been to Chicago talking about what's happening in Chicago. I'm not there. I don't know what's on the ground, but I'm sure there's more to it than just the sound bites. And I refuse to turn against brown people because they're trying to convince us that we don't have enough resources. I refuse to do it. I'm not doing it. Those are our brothers and sisters. They might be a little bit different from us, but they just like us. They got families, right? They want to get a job. They want the kids to grow up and go to college and be something just like me, just like many of you. And why can't we coalesce on that? Why are we always focusing on the division and what's different about us? It's to our detriment. Meanwhile, the people at the top are sitting back laughing at us because they got us arguing for crumbs down here. And there's a whole lot more to the pie that we could be consuming, but it's really unfortunate. What does it say that JD fans can go on national television and basically admit that he just made a story up for his own political devices, and there's really no blowback from the people that support him?
Yeah, because here's what I think on this, Nathan, is that, first thing that I would say is think what it takes for someone to believe that somebody would eat dogs and cats. So first, for me to even accept that as a possibility says that I already believe or think something in my spirit about an individual or a group of individuals that would lead me open to the idea that this is something that they would do. Right. I mean, just think about that. Like if I told you that I knew somebody, if I said, somebody in Cincinnati was eating dogs and cats, in out in Avondale, I mean, you wouldn't be like, oh, man, that's possible. You'd be like, man, get out of here. Right. Like, so there has to be a certain thing internally that people who are willing to accept that won't admit, a certain bias that exists that says, you know what, as crazy as this sounds, from what I think about these people, it's possible that they could be doing this, right? And some of that might be the racial, the cultural bias that we have about immigrants. I mean, Donald Trump has called Haiti a S-hole country, right? So people from an S-hole country just might eat dogs and cats, right? I mean, like that may be what some of his followers believe, because I think normal, rational people would be like, man, get out of here. That's not happening. So think about what you already have to think about a group of people that you would even lend credence to an accusation like that. Just think about that for a minute. The other thing I'll say is that it is a distraction from the real issues. I know I have a friend who lives in Springfield. In fact, I went to college in Springfield. I lived there for a while, worked in Springfield. I know the community very well. But I talked to this brother who lives there now, and he is not anti-immigrant. He's not anti-Haitian. But he was very honest about the real issues that the influx of Haitians have had on that community, on public services, the impact that the government subsidies that they're receiving for housing, the impact that that's having on landlords jacking up the rent in that community. So if you are an everyday citizen in Springfield who ain't getting government subsidies, it's harder for you to get a spot. He talked about A lot of traffic crashes. Apparently they're having difficulties acclimating to the driving laws here. So he said there are like 2-3 accidents every day in Springfield because they don't quite get the driving laws there. And then there are the cultural and social norms that take place in terms of how we as Americans deal with each other, the niceties, the politeness, the how we deal with people that culturally that's different, from where they are in Haiti. And then when you compile that with language barriers that might exist, it can create some frustrations and tensions. Some of these things are not end of the world issues for many people who live in Springfield, but they are things that force you to adapt and change. And I think people like him who are in Springfield are saying, hey, we're not against welcoming people here, but hey, there's some real issues and we need our city, we need our elected leaders, we need the state people to be attentive to this. And because they're not, because anytime we bring these things up, we're being called bigots or racist or intolerant, and that we're not allowed to be frustrated by these real issues, it's upsetting. And then what happens is you got these right wingers who come in and co-opt that conversation and take the frustrations of these people. And then they wind up agreeing with, he's like, man, I wind up having to agree with JD Vance to a certain extent, not about people eating cats and dogs, but when he's talking about the issues in Springfield, he's like, I'm like, yeah, what he said. He's like, and it makes me sick that I have to say that because I don't agree with him about much of his politics or the way that he does anything, but because nobody else is representing our concerns or validating them, then I got to wind up agreeing with this guy saying, yeah, what he just said, that's real, right? So I think the cultural stuff is a distraction that keeps us from talking about the real issues, which I think there are. And acknowledging that there are issues with the immigration influx is different than saying we don't want to welcome immigrants. I think, again, I think we get into these black and white conversations that says, if I'm critical of how things are being done, then somehow or another I'm anti-immigrant. And I think those things are different. And that's how we wind up losing people who could be allies.
If Fernand let you get in.
No, I agree. And, I was thinking about this fact. And what I have been hearing about what's going on in Springfield, if you have a household, you got a 3-bedroom house, and it's 3 of you all living there, or realistically 4 of us living there, and then by the end of the week, there are 20 people living in the house. That's going to create an incredible strain on just about every part of that cohabitation. And that's exactly what we've been seeing there. But I think what was interesting is I've heard all of these stories where they were debunking these theories about what's going on in Springfield. We're talking about nationally an illegal immigrant issue. That's not what we're talking about in Springfield. We're talking about people who are here legally. And many of them, I heard this one young guy who was on, he's like, I got here in 2017. Trump was the president when I came here. Like I came here under his policies. So, but that's what we ignore because again, what we're hearing helps to fire up a guttural issue in us, and it helps to, as we say, fire up the base, and helps to throw raw meat to the lion, which is what people like to see. If it bleeds, it leads. I mean, that theory hasn't changed since we started watching the news, and these are the same types of concepts. So, if there's something radical, something crazy, something out there, there's a certain group of people who want to accept it just because it fires us up and gives us something to argue about and continue to be polarized about, which is how, unfortunately, our country is kind of existing on a day-by-day tightrope all the time.
But, and again, I go back to the point, Nathan, of educate yourself on the issue. It's like everybody can have an opinion, but not all opinions are good opinions, right? Or informed opinions. And so there's a lot of reporting. There's a lot of information out there. Like, I wonder how many people have gone to that local newspaper in Springfield who are talking about this issue to read what they've been reporting on the phenomenon that's been taking place in their community over the last 5 to 10 years. I have. And outside of what we've done here at the Enquirer, which, again, I think is good work, Springfield for the last 5 years, media outlets like Cincinnati and bigger news organizations, we're parachuting in, but always go to the hometown publication of the place where it's at, and look what they've been doing, how they've been reporting on it, what people in the community have been saying over years. And Springfield has done, a tremendous amount of work. And so it's like, if you really want to talk about this, right, do you just want to be a part of the argument or the conversation, or do you want to be somebody who knows what they're talking about? And so go read, go find out what's going on, talk to people who are on the ground. Like, I can't remember which one of you said it earlier, but how can you have an opinion about a place you've never been? You don't know anybody. You don't know anything about the dynamics of the place. So I'm not saying you got to drive to Springfield, but I am saying there are ways that you can educate yourself through resources. Yeah, to read and find out. But for some people, that's too much work. It's easier to sit at the keyboard and bang out your thoughts than to actually go do some research and know what you're talking about.
All great points. And I still believe, though, that if we were talking about, number one, since when has population growth been a bad thing, right? All these cities are trying to grow, but somehow in Springfield was a bad thing. It sounds like the growing pains of an expanding city, which is a good thing, I thought. But I feel as if, I wonder, should I say, if we were talking about 25,000 Scandinavian migrants, and of course that never happened because, that's a prosperous country. But if we were talking about 25,000 Scandinavian migrants in Springfield, I don't think we'd be having the same kind of conversation. I just feel like if we were talking about 25,000 Scandinavian migrants and the exact same things were going on, people would have processed it different. It never would have been politicized by J.D. Vance and Trump. I still believe that this is racism. It's Willie Horton all over again. And if I heard that people were eating cats and dogs, to me, that's a humanitarian crisis. I'm thinking we need to get them some help. I'm not thinking, oh God, they're here, they're taking over, it's an invasion. And I think that race plays a big role in that.
Yeah, we wouldn't have dropped the atom bomb on Germany. I mean, we're not talking about a new phenomenon when we're talking about race and hostility and an international issue. So no, I don't disagree for a moment that if we were talking about an influx of Eastern Europeans or Europeans who didn't look like Haitians or didn't look like southern folks from southern France or Moors, that we would have the same issues. Of course. Can I point to a situation where that's happened? No, but I'm a 52-year-old black dude who reads and studies history and knows the reality of how we exist in this country. And so that's my opinion and that's my conclusion about how we would have dealt with this differently.
Well, you don't even have to go there, Fanon. I mean, you simply got to look at Trump's platform. Like, he's pretty much said that, part of his immigration deportation plan is to essentially get rid of brown people. I mean, that's pretty much what he said. He's not talking about removing people from this country that look like he looked, no matter where they're from. So, I mean, he said that. Like, that's been a part of his policy. So that's the thing with Trump. I mean, he's an open book. I mean, it's like, you just listen to what he says. He tells you everything that he thinks and the way that he wants to do things. What you have are his surrogates and his people who stand up for him, who try to convince the rest of the American public that what he said ain't actually what he said and what he meant. But I always say, listen to what the man says, right? Because last time he was in there, he did a lot of damage, and you had, people with some common sense who were trying to block a lot of the things that he did. This time, he's not going to have that barrier. He's going to put his folks in place who are going to do what he want to do. So you absolutely have to listen to what he says and take it seriously. And he's an open book. He doesn't hide from it. If you get Donald Trump talking, he will let you know exactly where he's at, what he's thinking, because he has no filter. And so, it's no surprise that this is a conversation about race, concerns about the browning of America. There is this notion of the white replacement theory that is circling around, that has a lot of people, a lot of white people in this country afraid of what America is going to look like moving forward. Not everyone, but a lot of them.
Kevin, I hear black people saying that. There's some circles on the internet where black people are saying that the Democrats are bringing them in to replace us as a voter base. I hear that from black people.
Well, first of all, they can't vote. So you know, that's the other part about it. It's like, you know, they throw these boogeymen or these straw arguments out there that have no validity. It's like Fanon said, this is not an illegal immigrant issue that we're talking about here. Like, these folks are here legally. Many of them were invited to Springfield to help a struggling community recover. You know, that doesn't get talked about. And the United States has been welcoming Haitian immigrants to the country since 2010, back when they had the earthquake there, and we were allowing refugees and asylum seekers to come in back even in 2010. So this is not a new phenomenon. It's new because the Trump-Vance ticket, immigration is their issue. It's a wedge issue, and it's one that they've run on. And Springfield is a perfect ground zero opportunity for them to push forward that agenda, even though none of the things that they talk about apply in Springfield. And who's suffering right now? The people of Springfield are suffering.
Right.
The Haitians in Springfield are suffering, and the people in Springfield who have real concerns about population explosion. Look, population growth is a good thing, but there is the very real reality that I think most places like to see growth. But the reality is if you grow too fast, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the public services in place sometimes to deal with those things without some help. And Springfield is one of those communities. Nobody's saying the growth is not good, but they need help. They need resources from the state and federal government to help them deal with that influx, because a community that was already struggling, and then suddenly you have over time, not even really suddenly, but over time, you have a growth in your population where you're already trying to dig out of a hole. That's a lot to expect. So yes, I agree with you. Population growth is a good thing, but you got to be prepared. You know, you got to be prepared for that growth at the same time.
But, you know, this entire episode presents an opportunity for Governor DeWine and the majority who are Republicans in the state house, because, you know, DeWine has come out pretty aggressively talking about this is garbage and they need to stop this stuff. Yeah. And those folks in Springfield do need assistance. And so, okay, put your money where your mouth is. If you accept that those folks in Springfield are in need of services and resources, whether that's, you know, law enforcement or whether it's infrastructure, then fine. Show not only that you resist the verbal ridiculousness that's coming from the person that you're saying that you support for president, put some actual resources to helping them to get it what they need in order to help to, you know, deal with the expansion that they're saying, that you're acknowledging is a difficult thing for them to deal with. It's an opportunity.
And they have. And if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, I think about $2.5, maybe $3 million has been allocated for Springfield. But over time, they're going to need not just one disbursement of resource, but over time, they're going to need a lot of help. So, you know, at some point, not today, because we're at the end of the show, we need to have a conversation about using the term illegal immigrants. Every time you guys say that, it just does something to me. But I'll save that flow for another show. I appreciate you both. And thank you for listening to the show today, guys. If you haven't already, please find us on YouTube, Hot Mic Podcast HQ. Okay, we want you to subscribe to us there. We also have a Facebook page, which is now not allowing us to live stream just yet, but you can follow us there. We'll put clips up there as well. And thank you for being here with us. We really appreciate it. All right, until next time, we'll be back on Friday at 1 p.m. With a whole new crew talking about hot topics. Until then, we're out.